1. The birth of a restless mind. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz was born in 1646 into a world cracking with ideological fractures and trembling under the weight of post-Reformation anxieties. Europe, in the aftermath of the 30 Years' War, was stitched together by fragile peace treaties and exhausted by theological quarrels. Into this world of broken certainties came a child who seemed destined to question every boundary humans had drawn around reality. Leibniz wasn't simply precocious. He was, in a way, uncontainable. From the age of 6, he began teaching himself Latin by playing with his father's books. The stories describe him as a child wandering among the ruins of grown-up philosophies, picking up fragments from Aristotle, Cicero, and medieval scholastics, and reconstructing them into his own private cosmology. He entered university at 15, but his real education had already taken root, an unshakable desire to find harmony in a chaotic world. Where most thinkers begin with discomfort or rebellion, Leibniz began with curiosity. His mind wasn't fueled by dissatisfaction with the world. It was fueled by the belief that the world, with all its fractures, ultimately made sense. And so the boy who read philosophy for play grew into a man who sought a universal order beneath human confusion, a divine calculus beneath history. 2. A world made of mirrors, Leibniz's monads. At the heart of Leibniz's philosophy lies one of the strangest and most beautiful ideas ever proposed. The universe is composed of monads. A monad, according to Leibniz, is not a particle, not a point in space, not a speck of matter. It is a windowless center of perception, a spiritual atom whose reality lies not in its physicality, but in its ability to reflect the entire universe from its own unique perspective. Imagine an infinity of mirrors, each facing inward, each reflecting the same cosmos, but with a slightly different tint, angle, and clarity. That is Leibniz's universe, a symphony of points of view, each one essential, each one a piece of the divine composition. Monads do not interact physically. They do not push or pull each other. Instead, they are perfectly synchronized by what Leibniz called pre-established harmony. Like clocks set in perfect alignment, they move in coordination without ever touching. This wasn't just metaphysics. It was psychology, theology, and cosmology braided into a single ornamental thread. Leibniz believed that everything, humans, animals, trees, even atoms, had an inner principle of activity. Everything was alive in some sense. Everything was a viewpoint. Everything was meaningful. And most importantly, every viewpoint mattered. In a world torn by conflict and hierarchy, Leibniz dared to propose that even the smallest fragment of existence contained a perspective that contributed to the whole. It was a philosophy of radical inclusion, centuries ahead of its time. 3. The best of all possible worlds. Misunderstood genius. If there is one idea for which Leibniz is remembered and often mocked, it is his famous claim that we live in the best of all possible worlds. Voltaire turned it into a caricature in Candide, portraying Leibniz's optimism as blind, ridiculous, and painfully naive. But Voltaire simplified what he feared, not what Leibniz meant. Leibniz was not claiming that everything is perfect or pleasant. He was not denying tragedy, inequality, or suffering. Instead, he proposed something more mathematically profound. Out of all possible versions of reality that could exist, each governed by different natural laws, different initial conditions, different structures, this is the one God chose because it balances freedom, order, diversity, and harmony in the most optimal way. Not perfect, not comfortable, but optimal in ways we cannot fully grasp. It was a cosmic version of engineering trade-offs. A universe simple enough to exist, complex enough to allow consciousness, lawful enough for science, free enough for moral agency. What makes Leibniz's claim powerful is that it is essentially an argument for responsibility. If this world has optimal potential, then our role is to actualize that potential, to reveal the harmony hidden within chaos. It wasn't optimism. It was duty, a contract between creation and creatures. 4. The mathematician of infinity. Leibniz was not merely a philosopher. He was a mathematician of rare genius, and perhaps the greatest polymath Europe ever produced. He invented calculus independently of Newton and, in many ways, more elegantly. Where Newton saw calculus as geometry, Leibniz saw it as language. Where Newton used limits implicitly, Leibniz used differentials explicitly. Where Newton relied on geometric intuition, Leibniz sought symbolic clarity. The notation he invented, dx, dy, integral, is the notation the world still uses. But calculus was only one of his mathematical obsessions. Leibniz believed that to think clearly was to calculate, and therefore he dreamed of building a symbolic language so universal, so rational, so transparent that all intellectual disputes could be resolved by computation. He imagined philosophers sitting at a table and saying, "Let us calculate, and we shall see who is right." This dream became the ancestor of modern logic, computer science, and formal systems. Leibniz was, in a very real sense, the prophet of computation, the first to see thinking and calculating as reflections of each other. The digital world we inhabit is not merely inspired by him. It is his worldview incarnated in silicon. 5. The machine that thinks. Leibniz as a proto-computer scientist. Long before the word computer existed, Leibniz built one. In the 1670s, he designed the stepped reckoner, a calculating machine capable of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. It was the first mechanical calculator to perform complex operations through a repeating digital mechanism. But more important than the device was the philosophy behind it. Leibniz believed that mechanical thought was the inevitable future of human reason. Numbers, symbols, logic, they were all gears in a larger machinery of understanding. If a machine could calculate, and if reasoning could be reduced to calculation, then machines could eventually think. It was a wild prophecy for the 17th century, but today it reads like a blueprint for artificial intelligence. To Leibniz, human cognition was not mysterious. It was structured. It was systematic. It was a form of information processing. He believed that ideas could be encoded, transformed, and decoded, centuries before the concept of binary logic. He even conceptualized a proto-binary system, arguing that the entire universe could be expressed using only 1 and 0, symbolizing God and creation. In many ways, the digital age is one long footnote to Leibniz's imagination. 6. The diplomat of unity, science, faith, and conflict. Leibniz spent much of his life traveling across Europe, serving as a diplomat, advisor, librarian, and intellectual ambassador. But he was not merely a political diplomat. He was a diplomat of ideas. He dreamed of reconciling Catholics and Protestants, science and faith, reason and revelation, ancient philosophy and modern physics. He considered divisions among humans to be intellectual errors, misunderstandings that could be resolved through better reasoning and better communication. His correspondence stretched across nations, fields, and ideologies. He wrote to more than 1,000 thinkers, scientists, theologians, mathematicians, princes. In an age of polarization and tribal conflict, he tried to build bridges out of concepts, symbols, and equations. And in his diplomatic work, we see a core dimension of his psychology. Leibniz could not stand fragmentation. He sought unity everywhere. If history was broken, he wanted to mend it. If human knowledge was scattered, he wanted to synthesize it. If God's plan seemed hidden, he wanted to decode it. He was not merely a thinker, He was a harmonizer. 7. The universe as music, pre-established harmony. One of Leibniz's most poetic ideas is pre-established harmony. The notion that all substances in the universe, though independent, are perfectly synchronized by God from the moment of creation. Imagine a choir in which each singer performs their part independently, yet the result is flawless harmony because the music was composed that way from the beginning. That, for Leibniz, was the structure of reality. Humans, animals, atoms, planets, each followed its own internal rule, its own monadic rhythm, and yet the whole formed a coherent symphony. This idea is more than metaphysics. It reveals something profound about how Leibniz viewed existence. He saw the cosmos not as a battlefield of forces, but as a composition, a grand art piece, a divine orchestration in which even suffering, when understood from a higher perspective, has its place and purpose. It was a radical faith in the intelligibility of the universe, not the universe of random accidents, not the universe of blind forces, but the universe of meaning. 8. Human freedom in a determined universe. One of Leibniz's greatest challenges was reconciling human freedom with the deterministic structure of pre-established harmony. If everything is already synchronized, then what do our choices matter? Leibniz's answer was elegant. Freedom is not the ability to act without cause. Freedom is the ability to act according to one's own internal nature. A monad is not pushed around by the universe. It expresses itself from within. It acts because of how it perceives and understands. To be free, for Leibniz, is to be self-explanatory. You are free when your action flows from your character, your values, your perceptions, not from external coercion. And because each monad has its own way of seeing the universe, each one's actions reflect a unique inner world. This idea transforms individuality into something sacred. You do not choose from randomness, you choose from identity. You do not act from chaos. You act from understanding. Your freedom is the expression of your perspective on the universe. This is not fatalism. It is not determinism. It is a metaphysics of agency. 9. Leibniz and the problem of evil. Every philosopher who believes in cosmic harmony eventually confronts the same question. Why is there suffering? Why is there injustice? Why is there pain? For Leibniz, evil was not a flaw in creation, but a necessary condition for a world with free will, natural laws, and moral growth. He argued that eliminating all suffering would require eliminating the very structures that allow consciousness, learning, or freedom to exist. A world without the possibility of evil, for Leibniz, would be a world without meaning, closer to a machine than a moral reality. He didn't justify evil, he contextualized it. He believed that perspective defines experience, and that from a higher vantage point, one not available to humans. The totality of reality would reveal a deeper coherence in which even painful events contribute to a larger harmony. This was not consolation. It was not denial. It was metaphysical courage. The courage to believe that what we cannot understand might still have structure. The courage to trust that meaning is not always visible from inside the story. The courage to see existence not as a mistake, but as a project. 10. The Library of All Knowledge. Leibniz the Archivist. Leibniz spent the later years of his life as a librarian in Hanover, organizing archives, designing classification systems, and trying to map the entirety of human knowledge. But he was not filing documents. He was building a prototype of modern information science. He believed that knowledge could be systematically organized, indexed, and interlinked. He envisioned a universal encyclopedia long before the idea existed. He believed in structured knowledge, systematic thought, intellectual networks, cross-referencing, optimized retrieval, logical organization. These were not administrative fantasies. They were the ancestors of search engines, databases, symbolic computation, conceptual graphs, semantic webs, modern information architecture. The digital forest of data in which modern humanity lives is an extension of Leibniz's mental landscape. 11. The loneliness of the universal mind. For all his brilliance, Leibniz lived a strangely lonely intellectual life. His ideas were centuries ahead of their time, and many of his contemporaries considered him eccentric or overly speculative. He died without fame, without a crowd of mourners, without the recognition that would later be showered upon him. His manuscripts, thousands of pages, remain scattered for decades, unread and unedited. This is perhaps the most tragic dimension of his life. He saw the unity of the universe, but lived in a world too fragmented to see him clearly. His dream of a harmonious Europe failed. His dream of reconciling religions failed. His dream of a rational language remained unfinished. His dream of universal understanding went unrealized. He was a man of enormous visions trapped in the limitations of a smaller world. And yet, centuries later, humanity finally caught up. Today, we live in a civilization built on the very principles he articulated: digital computation, formal logic, databases, symbolic reasoning, mathematical physics, systems theory, global interconnectedness. Leibniz didn't live in the world he imagined, but we do. 12. Leibniz's legacy, the philosopher of possibility. If we strip away the details, the mathematics, the theology, the metaphysics, what remains at the core of Leibniz's thought? One word: possibility. He saw the universe as a vast space of potential realities, each governed by logical structures and mathematical relations. He saw existence as the actualization of possibility. He saw individuals as centers of meaning expressing their own interpretations of the cosmic whole. He believed that the human mind is capable of infinite growth because reality itself is structured in layers of discoverable, rational order. In this sense, Leibniz is the philosopher of hope, not naive hope, but logical hope. Hope grounded in the belief that the universe is comprehensible, that chaos has structure, that conflict can be reconciled, and that human reason can illuminate even the darkest corners of existence. His philosophy tells us, there is always more to understand. There is always more to discover. There is always possibility. 13. The human lesson, seeing the world as harmony in motion. What does Leibniz offer to modern minds? He offers a worldview in which meaning is not accidental. A worldview in which everything, every mind, every action, every perception is part of a larger tapestry of significance. He teaches us that individuality is sacred, perspective is valuable, diversity is essential, conflict can be harmonized, intelligence evolves, reality has depth, the cosmos is fundamentally intelligible. He encourages us to look at life not as a collection of disconnected events, but as a dynamic whole, a symphony in which each instrument matters. Most importantly, he challenges us to think of ourselves not as isolated beings, but as nodes of perception within a larger network. A world of monads is a world of meaning. A world of harmony is a world of responsibility. A world of possibility is a world of hope. 14. Final reflection, a universe that thinks through us. Leibniz once wrote that each mind is a living mirror of the universe. This is perhaps his most profound legacy. To be conscious is to participate in the cosmos. To think is to reflect the infinite. To understand is to bring harmony into clarity. Leibniz's universe is not indifferent. It is not cold. It is not mechanical. It is alive with perspective, alive with reason, alive with meaning. And in that universe, we are not passive observers.